Hello, and welcome to this military summary for the 11th of July. And today I'm just going to go over the frontline changes and look at this map that I made. And I do want to update this every day based on whatever changes there are to the front lines. So expect more of these videos. Um, they're much easier to make than just animating stuff that takes hours of work. So this is much easier for me. So I'm just gonna get right into what's been going on over the past few days. So I just want to start here with the Kherson region and just look at some of the battles that are going on here. So specifically in Alexandrivka, I really don't know who's in control of this town. To my knowledge, it's been going back and forth between Russia and Ukraine, and it's just not a favorable position to hold because it's on like the eastern bank of this lake, and due to like all these elevation problems. So I do think that it's contested at the moment. Although there are some Russian sources saying that they control the town. Like I know on Rybar's map they have this as Russian controlled. Either way, there isn't much going on here that's of note besides what's been going on in the town of Ivanivka. So this town, it used to be under Russian control, but it's been confirmed that Ukraine took over here. I think like a week ago, and there were some fires a few days ago that were sort of like east of Ivanivka, around I'll show it around here. You know, there were some fires over there, so I think it's safe to say that this town is under Ukrainian control. But for the most part, this entire region is not seeing much fighting in terms of changes to the front line. There is a lot of artillery barrages from Russia and then counter artillery from Ukraine, but you're not really seeing many changes. Even though we have been hearing about this so-called counteroffensive that was supposed to be commenced by Ukraine first in July, now people are saying it might occur in August. I don't see anything like that happening. There will have to be a mass mobilization, uh, and something like, I don't know, a million Ukrainian troops take back Kherson. But for the moment, I don't see anything going on here. In the future, though, we might see Russia like landing in Ochakiv here. We'll have some like amphibious landing on this town, and then what will happen is they'll go up from here and then try to flank Mykolaiv from the west as they're attacking from the east. And I did a prediction on this a few like 10 days ago. So I can see Mykolaiv getting encircled like that, but that won't happen for a while. So anyway, let's move on to the front line around here in Donetsk. In Zaporizhia, there isn't much going on that I could talk about. So I'm just gonna go on to Donetsk. So specifically here with Pavlivka, um, Ukraine did take the town. They had like this minor offensive operation where they first uh took Pavlivka and Shevchenko and Yehorivka, but those towns they've been at least some of them have been retaken by DPR forces, and now basically Ukraine has entrenched themselves in Pavlivka. So I guess you can say that they secured one village, but for the most part, there's not a lot of changes going on now. The front line has stabilized, and this is a very heavily entrenched area, which is why the Russian forces, they've been moving some of their men from Lysychansk that was just taken by them, and they're moving them towards this area of fighting just to reinforce the DPR fighters who are currently just trying to stabilize the front line. So I don't expect much to happen here. And another thing to note is that this minor town called Solotke. Apparently, it's under Ukrainian control. It seems like it's pretty deep into like DPR territory. So we'll see if they want to stay here or like withdraw further back to this road around here. Maybe in the future. But for now, they have control of that area. So anyway, in Donetsk itself, in the city, there's been a lot of fighting, but Russia has not been able to gain much ground. So, for instance, in Marinka, um, Ukraine has reported at least that there's been a lot of Russian attempts at advancing, but to my knowledge, there hasn't been any ground gained by the Russian forces around here. And for some time, Russia did control the southern sector of the city, but eventually Ukraine did recapture that. But I do think that if Russia wants to dislodge the large amount of AFU presence in and around like Donetsk, they really need to mop up Marinka and then need to focus on flanking Avdiivka, maybe from the north. You see, like that, and like this. I mean, that's possible because they already have a bridgehead past this road. So if they take Kamyanka and then try to encircle Avdiivka, that would be a huge blow to Ukraine because this is one of the most heavily entrenched um, villages in the entire front line since it's been like this has been a major epicenter for fighting for 8 years, you know. So we're gonna have to see what happens with that. Okay, so now I want to move on to the front south of Bakhmut, and I want to talk about how it's very important that Russia dislodge the Ukrainian positions around here before they actually go on to try and take Bakhmut itself, because you know this is a very large city, probably um, equivalent to like Severodonetsk. I don't know the exact numbers, but it is a major city. It has an industrial area, lakes, um, all these major like geographical features. So before they can attack Bakhmut head on, what I do think will happen is they need to dislodge the forces in Novoluhansk, and I don't know why, but they have been the Ukrainian troops, they have been able to defend this town um, despite incessant assaults on it. So they probably do have a large force there. And at first, there was actually a Russian presence in this town around here, and they were even approaching into Kadema, but eventually they got pushed back. And now we're seeing fighting around Dolomitne again. So this is a contested town now, and the thermal plant here is still under Ukrainian control. And despite constant attacks by the Russians, we haven't really seen the Ukrainian forces retreat towards this line, which is what you would expect because it's a much more defendable line for the Ukrainians. So before Russia wants to take on Bakhmut, they really do need to clear out this southern industrial sector. And that's what they're doing now. There has been a shift towards the Bakhmut front. For instance, a few days ago, the town Klinove came under Russian control, and there have been reports of fighting around Vesela Dolina, around here, Zaitsev, Vershina. I don't actually know if Vershina is under Russian control. I might have to change that in the future if there's like some report contradicting what I have um, mapped out. But you know, this is only like 5 kilometers away from Bakhmut itself. So there there have already been a lot of civilians fleeing from the area. There have been strikes, specifically yesterday on Chasi VR, this city over here. So that killed a lot of AFU service members, and I expect to see more of that in the future as the battles get closer and closer to Bakhmut itself. Anyway, more towards the north of Bakhmut, We have been seeing fighting um around here in Pokrovsk. Apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. Specifically in the southern part of the town, because it is a pretty long town, you know. Um, but there's been like fighting here in the southern areas, and then like more to the east. I do still think it's contested based on some of the fire maps, so I'm gonna just keep it as contested. But this is basically the last town in this triangle area of open fields around the roads that connect Soledar to Bakhmut. And speaking of which, Soledar, there have been reports of a lot of artillery attacking AFU positions in Soledar recently. There were videos of like administrative centers being bombed a few days ago. So I do expect Russia from their positions in Nova Kamyanka to go ahead and attack Soledar. And that is necessary just to flank the AFU positions in Bakhmut. Because once you have control over here, it sort of dislodges the road connecting Bakhmut to all these other cities. And then they can attack from the north in a pincer movement while they have control of the south, as I talked about before. So we'll see if Ukraine decides to stay in Bakhmut or if they withdraw once they see the writing on the wall. And now I'm going to go to this front on the border between Lugansk and Donetsk. So there have been reports recently of Spirne being taken by Russia. I do think this is true based on some of the fire maps. So I do think the front line has shifted towards Ivano-Darivka. I don't know if Russia has a full presence here. There aren't any sources saying that. I do think that the town is contested, but there have been some like pro-Russian sources saying that the fighting has like shifted towards Viimka. I think I'm saying that correctly. And this is important because you see this like road going along here. This is the road connecting Seversk to Nahirne and all these other towns along this highway that has been the front line for a month now. Let me show you what I'm talking about. This road, the one that's from Soledar to Nahirne, it's been a very good front line for the AFU. They haven't really had control of this highway, but they have been able to stabilize the front line along it. But if they transport supplies, then they can be exposed to Russian artillery and snipers and stuff like that. But either way, it would be a big blow to reach these roads and then sort of cut off Soledar from the south and then even reach like Zvanivka. That's an important town. And once they take Vimka, then they could easily reach Zvanivka, the Russians, and that would put Seversk in a precarious situation. Further north in Rihorivka, I don't actually know the state of affairs going on here. Some people saying it's under Russian control, some saying it's contested. It would make sense if Russia has control, or at the very least Ukraine withdrew, because there's more fighting going on around this axis and Serebryanka. And once Russia takes this town, they can also flank Seversk from the north. There was talk about Russia crossing the Donetsk River again around like Platonivka, Dronivka, but I don't think any of that's actually come into fruition. Maybe later on when Russia advances head on Seversk, they'll try to sort of cut off the retreating Ukrainians who are going to go from like Seversk to this E40 highway. They can sort of land here and just try to cut off the retreating Ukrainians, sort of like what happened in Lysychansk. Although that wasn't as successful, there were some AFU troops taken prisoner in Lysychansk, but the numbers are very low. So we might see another Ukrainian withdrawal similar to what we saw over there in Lysychansk. Now, there was some fighting in Ryhorodork, not in the city, but in the periphery of the city, around the Donetsk River here. I don't know if Russia actually crossed, but I do know for sure that there were some strikes on the town itself. So maybe the goal of Russia is to sort of cross the river here, just to have like a staging ground to then like later on launch some attacks on Slavyansk. And they haven't really been able to penetrate deeper into the Ukrainian positions in and around Slavyansk because there has been some stiff Ukrainian defense and Russia isn't really putting much resources into this front. Take for instance this town over here that I don't even want to try to pronounce. Right now it's under Russian control, but this is something very recent because for a while people thought it was under Russian control, but fire maps said otherwise because there was like still a lot of fires going on in the town itself, and there was even some videos of Ukrainian forces operating in the town. So now it's finally confirmed that Russia has control of this area, but it took a while for them to do this because of a lot of Ukrainian mines being planted in the area, and even here in Dolina, Russia used to have like control of this town, but they were eventually pushed back. So Ukraine does have a pretty solid defensive line around Krasnopilya and Dolina. So we'll see if that holds on for much longer. And then here, there has been a lot of talk regarding whether Russia even has control of Prishib and then Sidorov. Um, I think they do, but it's a very small presence, and Sidorov it's probably contested now. It used to be under Russian control, but then they withdrew, and now it's just there's fighting going on in the town again. But I don't see any major breakthroughs going on. Once they do take Sidorov, though, the Russians they can like advance them to this town a bit south, and then from there, you know, they're gonna go for Slavyansk. Now let's go to the Kharkiv front. And here there hasn't been many developments. I just want to point out that Paramoha is actually contested. It's not fully under Ukrainian control. But again, this is just positional fighting. I don't see any like Russian attempts at a large-scale offensive around Kharkiv going on until they clear out Donetsk. So for now, it's just like Russian strikes on Kharkiv and Chuhuiv, all these like major cities in the area that have a AFU presence. They just want to decrease the AFU capacities before they launch the inevitable offensive. I just wanted to point out one last thing here. I made this change to the map because there was reports of fighting around Svitlichny, and that sort of implies that this town, Sosnivka, is under Russian control, which I was on the fence about, but I'm pretty sure that it is. So I'm just marking Sosnivka as captured by Russia, and we'll see if they actually advance further towards this town. But besides that, there hasn't been much going on, and I'll try to update this tomorrow. And for now, I'm gonna